What happens when a night of celebration turns into a whirlwind of unexpected passion? Meet Louise, a fitness enthusiast and dedicated employee who finds herself drawn into a complicated web of desire after a corporate party. Just one kiss ignites a thrilling yet dangerous connection with Regina, the boss's alluring wife. Can they navigate the tangled emotions and consequences that follow? Stay tuned to unravel this captivating story, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more intriguing tales. I'm Louise, 29 years old, and I've always been passionate about fitness. Since I was a child, sports have been a major part of my life, and it's something I've consistently pursued. Whether it's the gym, running, swimming, anything to stay in shape, it not only keeps me fit, but also feels great to push myself. I've been employed at a large company in New York for a few years now, and I genuinely enjoy it. The work is demanding but manageable. The team is wonderful, and my boss, Mr. Smith, is tough yet fair. I have a good rapport with everyone. No complaints. It's the kind of job where you show up, do your work, and leave without any hassle. There's a certain comfort in that. One thing I've always appreciated about this company is how much they care about their employees. Every year, they host a big corporate event, and this year, I was especially excited about it. It's not just the free food and drinks, although let's face it, that's always a bonus. It's also a chance to relax, mingle, and connect with people outside the office setting. We all work hard, and this party is one of the rare nights where we can completely unwind. I had been looking forward to this night for quite some time. There was a strict formal dress code, and I had already chosen my sharpest suit, a slim fit, charcoal gray one that always gets compliments. You know the one. It makes me feel like a different version of myself whenever I wear it. On the day of the party, I took extra care in preparing. The event was being held at a swanky venue downtown, and as soon as I entered, I could feel the excitement in the air. The place was alive with laughter and conversation, with people from every department socializing and enjoying themselves. The mood was relaxed, with no mention of work, just the kind of night I needed. I found a few colleagues I knew well, and we grabbed drinks, enjoying the vibe. But as the night progressed, something odd caught my attention. Mr. Smith, who is typically composed, had started drinking a bit more than usual. He wasn't fully drunk, but it was clear he was getting there. Then, midway through the evening, he disappeared. No one seemed to be bothered. After all, he was the boss, and it wasn't uncommon for him to slip away when things got a little too rowdy. He retreated to his hotel room for some rest, leaving the rest of us to continue enjoying the night. At first, I didn't think much of it. I was having a good time, and everyone else seemed to be enjoying themselves as well. People were dancing, chatting, and letting loose. That's when it happened. As I was caught up in the music, laughing with a couple of coworkers, I felt a soft tug on my arm. When I turned around, there she was, Regina. Regina is, well, she's something else. She's Mr. Smith's wife, and I've seen her at company events before. She always dresses impeccably and carries herself with an air of authority that makes people take notice. At 37, She looks like she could easily pass for someone in her mid-20s. She's tall, with dark hair always perfectly styled, and her eyes have this sharpness to them, as though she's always in control of any situation. But tonight, there was something different about her. Without saying a word, she took my hand and led me away from the crowd. At first, I thought maybe she needed help with something, but then she steered me to a quiet corner of the venue, out of sight from the others. I wasn't sure what was happening, and I might have misread the situation, but then she did something that completely threw me off. She kissed me. It wasn't a quick peck on the cheek or anything casual. It was a full kiss, right on the lips. For a moment, I was frozen, completely caught off guard. But then, something in me decided to just go with it. She pulled away, her eyes locking onto mine, and without hesitation, she whispered, "Let's make tonight unforgettable." I didn't know what to say. I was stunned, but I wasn't about to push her away. It wasn't that I was looking for something like this, but at that moment, I couldn't deny the chemistry between us. It felt strange and unexpected, but something inside me said, why not? We spent the rest of the night wandering the city, talking, laughing, and acting like two people who had completely forgotten about the world around us. It felt liberating and wild, and I hadn't experienced that in a long time. As the night went on, we ended up at her hotel, and that's where I woke up the next morning, alone in the room, with no memory of what had happened after that kiss. I felt disoriented and confused, and part of me wondered if it had all been some kind of dream. But as I lay there, my mind was racing with questions about what exactly had occurred. Little did I know that night would set the stage for everything that followed. I woke up in a hotel room that wasn't mine. The bed felt too large, and the room was too quiet. I sat up slowly, trying to piece together the events of the previous night. Everything was hazy, like I had just emerged from a fog. I checked my phone. It was already late morning, and I had clearly slept much longer than I had intended. I wasn't sure how I had ended up there, or what had happened after. I had followed Regina out of the party, and the only thing I could clearly recall was the kiss. It wasn't the kind of kiss you easily forget, and yet there I was, feeling like I had stumbled into something that wasn't entirely real. I got up, put on my jacket, and exited the hotel room. The hallway was quiet, and I hurried to the elevator, hoping I wouldn't run into anyone who might notice how disoriented I felt. I didn't want to face the aftermath of whatever had happened the previous night. It all felt too overwhelming, too abrupt, and I wasn't even sure if I wanted to think about it. The drive home felt like a haze. I didn't hear the radio, didn't pay attention to the traffic. My mind kept replaying images of Regina, her touch, her kiss, and the way she had guided me away from the party, as if we were the only two people there. I tried to convince myself it was just a one-off. After all, she was married to Mr. Smith. She was his wife. This had to be some kind of mistake, right? But deep down, I couldn't deny the attraction between us. I hadn't felt anything like that in a long time, and it left me confused. I was still trying to process it all when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Regina. "Hey, I know things got a little wild last night. Can we talk? I'm staying at the hotel for a few more days. I stared at the message for what felt like ages before responding. I wanted to ignore it, pretend the night hadn't happened, but something about her kept nagging at me. I hesitated, then typed back, "Sure, when do you want to meet?" The reply came almost immediately. "How about lunch today? I'll be at the cafe across the street from the office." I had no idea what to expect. I hadn't really spoken to her outside of work, but here I was, agreeing to meet her again. I drove to the cafe, trying to act casually, but everything about it felt off. What was I doing? Was I really going to have lunch with my boss's wife after everything that had happened? When I arrived at the cafe, she was already there, sitting at a table by the window. She looked as polished as she had the night before, but there was a softness in her eyes, like she was waiting for something, maybe for me. I walked over and sat across from her. We exchanged a brief, awkward smile before she spoke. "Louise, I know this might seem a little unexpected, but I couldn't just let last night go without saying something," she began. "I don't want you to think I'm just some woman who can't control herself. I've been thinking a lot." I wasn't sure how to respond. What could I say? I was still trying to make sense of everything that had happened, and hearing her words didn't make it easier. She was apologizing, but I wasn't sure for what. She continued, her voice calm but serious. "I think we both know that what happened last night wasn't just about one kiss. It was something more, and I know it's complicated. I don't want to make this difficult for you, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel something real." I sat there, silently absorbing her words. She was right. It hadn't been just about the kiss. From the beginning, there had been a chemistry between us, and the way she spoke now made it clear she wasn't just brushing it off either. "I didn't plan for this," she added. "I never intended for anything like that to happen, but in that moment, it just felt right, and now I can't stop thinking about it." I was still trying to process what she was saying, but one thing was obvious. Regina wasn't backing away from this. She wasn't pretending it was a mistake or something we could easily forget, and that made it feel all the more real. I took a deep breath before responding, trying to gather my thoughts. "Look, Regina, I don't know what to say. I mean, we both know the situation. You're married, you're my boss's wife. This can't be something we just act on, right?" She nodded, her expression softening. I know, but I also know that sometimes feelings don't just disappear because we want them to. I'm not asking you to make any decisions right now, but I think we should talk about it." There was an unspoken tension between us, a subject neither of us had the courage to say outright, yet it was clear we were both on the same page. Something had changed between us, and we couldn't just ignore it. The rest of the lunch passed in a blur, both of us cautious, neither of us wanting to overstep any boundaries. But when I left, there was a certain shift in the air, something that felt unavoidable. We hadn't made any promises, but we both knew where this was headed. I stepped out of the cafe and suddenly realized I was much more involved than I had ever intended to be, and there was no way to undo it. Over the next few days, things between Regina and me didn't fade away like I had hoped. In fact, it was the opposite. I found myself constantly thinking about her, the way she kissed me at the party, everything we had talked about at the cafe. It felt like I couldn't get her out of my mind, like she was a thought I couldn't push aside. The truth was, I hadn't expected any of this to happen. I was just a guy who went to work, did his job, and led a good life. But now, it seemed like I was caught in a reality I had no control over. I had always prided myself on keeping things professional, but every time I saw her, I couldn't help but wonder where this was headed. Regina, for her part, didn't make things any easier. A few days after lunch, she called me, asking if I wanted to grab coffee. I almost said no, but there was something in her voice, a touch of sincerity, that made me agree. I was still confused, but I couldn't deny that there was a strong chemistry between us. We met at a quiet cafe downtown, one of those spots where it felt like no one noticed you. As I entered, I spotted her sitting by the window, dressed in a sharp blazer that made her look even more professional than she already was. But there was something different in her eyes. It wasn't the usual cold, calculating stare of someone in charge. It was softer, almost vulnerable. "Hey," she said with a smile when I sat down. "I didn't expect you to come." "I know this is a lot," she added, and I could tell she wasn't sure how to start. Honestly, I wasn't sure either. The entire situation felt surreal, but we both knew we couldn't just keep avoiding it. "I'm not sure where this is going, Regina," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though my nerves were on edge. "We can't just pretend everything's normal. We can't keep meeting like this. It's not right." She leaned forward, her gaze intense, but her voice calm. "I know, but I don't think this is something we can ignore. You felt it too, didn't you? That night at the party, I can't stop thinking about it." I took a deep breath. Of course, I had felt it. The attraction, the way she looked at me, the kiss. It wasn't something you could just forget. "I don't know what to think anymore," I admitted. "This is all messed up. You're married to Mr. Smith. You're in charge here. This could ruin everything." She shook her head, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "I know, I've been thinking about that too, but that's why I called you here. I need to talk to you. I need to figure this out. I don't want to regret this." I had to admit, her honesty was refreshing. It was rare for people, especially in our professional world, to be so open, but with Regina, it felt different. There was a vulnerability in her I hadn't expected, and maybe, just maybe, that was what drew me to her even more. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice quieter than I had meant. "I don't even know if I can trust myself in this situation." Her eyes softened and she looked down at her hands for a moment. "I'm not asking you for anything you don't want. I just need you to understand how I feel. I haven't been this clear-headed in years. I've been living in the shadow of my marriage, under the weight of being Mr. Smith's wife, and now, for the first time, I feel like I'm doing something for me. Her words took me by surprise. I had no idea what her life was really like outside of work. All I had ever seen was the sharp, professional Regina, the woman who seemed to control everything. I had no clue she was feeling trapped. So what now? I asked, my mind racing. Do we just pretend it didn't happen? Or do we keep seeing each other in secret? She gave a small, sad smile. I'm not asking for secrecy, Louise, but we have to be careful. We don't know what this could mean for either of us. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to walk away from this mess, pretend like nothing had changed. But the other part, the part that had been drawn to her from the beginning, knew I was already too involved. We sat in silence for a while, neither of us knowing what to do next. Regina wasn't pushing for anything. She was just being honest. The weight of it all hit me like a ton of bricks, and I realized then that I was much deeper in this than I had ever imagined. I never expected this to happen. I'm not suggesting we do anything impulsive, she said, breaking the quiet. But I need you to really think about this, about us. Just like that, time seemed to stop. There was no turning back. I had to accept that whatever was developing between us was genuine and not going away. After that, we went our separate ways, both uncertain about what might come next. But one thing was clear. Things had changed, and I had no clue where it would all lead. It's odd how life can change so quickly. One moment, I was just an average guy at work, going about my usual routine with no surprises, and the next, I found myself caught in something I couldn't fully comprehend. Something that wasn't supposed to happen, but felt impossible to stop. After our final conversation, Regina and I didn't communicate much for a few days. She gave me some space, and honestly, I appreciated it. My mind was all over the place, and I needed time to process everything. It wasn't just the fact that she was married, though that was a huge factor. It was everything else, too. The suddenness of it all, how quickly things had unfolded, made me feel out of my depth. But a week later, she reached out again. I didn't see it coming, but there it was, a message that said, "Can we meet again? I think we need to talk some more." I knew exactly what that meant. It wasn't just a casual conversation. It was her way of saying she wanted more, and deep down, I knew I couldn't refuse. I couldn't just walk away from what was happening between us. There was something undeniable there. We set up a meeting at a quiet, hidden bar, one of those places where no one would recognize us, where we could talk without fear of being overheard. The last thing I needed was for anyone to find out about what was going on between us. As much as I wanted to pretend it wasn't happening, I couldn't stop thinking that this might lead to something even more complicated than I was ready for. When I arrived, I spotted her already sitting at a corner table, looking as beautiful as ever. Her blonde hair framed her face perfectly, and her eyes seemed a little brighter than usual, though she carried an air of tension in the way she sat. She glanced up and gave me a small, reserved smile as I sat across from her. "I didn't think you'd come," she said, her voice soft, yet carrying a hint of something I couldn't quite identify. There was a mix of relief and something more delicate in her tone. I wasn't sure if I should, I admitted, leaning back in my chair. This whole situation, I don't know how to deal with it. I know, she replied, nodding slowly, but I can't stop thinking about it, about you. I didn't know how to respond. Hearing her say it out loud was difficult. It was the very thing I had been trying to avoid. I didn't want to acknowledge that I had been thinking about her too, but I couldn't deny it any longer. I've been thinking about it too, I finally said, my voice quiet. I don't know what we're doing, Regina. This isn't like anything I've ever experienced. I can't even explain it. She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine with such intensity that it made my heart race. It doesn't have to be complicated, Louise. We don't need to have everything figured out right now. We just need to be honest with each other. I'm telling you, I want this. I want to see where this leads. Her words hung in the air, and for a brief moment, I couldn't breathe. The reality of what she was saying finally sank in. This wasn't just a fleeting moment. She wasn't seeking a casual fling or a temporary distraction. She was fully invested in whatever this could become, and despite all my concerns, the doubts, and the fear of how things might go wrong, I found myself agreeing. Okay, I said, let's do this, but we need to keep this between us. No one can find out, at least not yet. She nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Of course, we'll take it slow, but I want you to know, Louise, this is real for me. I wasn't sure what I was getting into, but as we spent the next few hours talking and laughing, I felt something change, something I hadn't anticipated. There was a connection, one that went beyond the physical, beyond the thrill of the secrecy. By the time we left the bar, it was clear there was no turning back. We both knew what was happening, and we both understood it couldn't be undone. As we parted, she kissed me on the cheek, soft, brief, but lingering just enough to leave me feeling like I was floating. I'll see you soon, she whispered before walking away, and just like that, my life became more complicated, more dangerous, and far more exciting. I couldn't help but wonder what would come next. It's strange how a single choice can completely alter the course of your life. A moment that at the time seems insignificant, but later you realize was the turning point. That moment came for me when Regina and I found ourselves sitting across from each other in a small cafe, just like we had many times before. But this time, something felt different. There was a sense of finality in the air. We had been meeting secretly for weeks. What had begun as something thrilling, a little risky, and something we both knew we shouldn't be doing, had slowly evolved into something more complex. The line between right and wrong had become so blurred it was nearly impossible to see anymore. But throughout it all, we had been careful, never letting it slip, never letting anyone find out. The secrecy added excitement, but the weight of it was beginning to wear on me. Regina was the first to speak, her eyes locked on mine. Louise, she began softly, I've been thinking a lot about this, about us, and I think I know what we need to do. A knot tightened in my stomach. I'd been avoiding this conversation for as long as I could. The idea that she might want to end it had been in the back of my mind, but I wasn't ready for it. It wasn't just the relationship that worried me, it was everything that came with it. I couldn't pretend that I didn't care about her, but I also couldn't ignore the fact that what we were doing wasn't right. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, though inside I was struggling to keep it together. She paused, her fingers nervously tapping on the table. "We've been living in this bubble for so long, but I'm starting to realize we can't keep pretending. I can't keep pretending. I'm married, Louise. I've been lying to my husband, to myself, and I don't want to keep doing this." I stared at her, feeling both relief and sadness. Part of me had known this moment was inevitable, but another part had hoped we could keep going, living in the secrecy of it all. But hearing her say it out loud made it real. "I know," I said quietly. "I've been thinking the same thing." There was a long silence, and for a moment, I wondered if we had both made a mistake. Maybe we were just two people caught up in the heat of the moment, looking for something that wasn't truly there. But as I looked at Regina, I realized there was something real between us, something deeper than mere physical attraction. But it was also something that couldn't survive in the world we lived in. "I love you, Louise," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But I can't keep doing this. I don't want to hurt anyone else, and I can't hurt myself anymore." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I knew she cared about me, but hearing her say that she loved me made me realize just how much we had both invested in this. It wasn't just an affair. It had become something much more complicated, something that couldn't continue without consequences. "I love you too, Regina," I replied, my heart heavy. "But I think we both know this can't go on. We have to stop before it gets worse." We sat in silence for a few more minutes, the weight of our decision pressing down on us. There were no more words to say, no more justifications. We both knew that continuing would be unfair not only to our husbands, but to ourselves. The guilt was unbearable, and we had both reached our breaking points. Finally, Regina stood up, and I followed her. We walked out of the cafe together, side by side, but there was a distance between us now, a distance that had grown over time and could no longer be ignored. As we said our final goodbyes, I realized that while this marked the end of us, it wasn't the end of what we had shared. It was something that would stay with me forever, a reminder of the choices we made and the lives we led. I don't know what the future holds for me or for Ina, but as I walked away from her, I knew one thing for sure. I had made the right choice. We both had. This was over,